Well, folks, it's time to kick it old school. So you can feel cool. Give it to me, baby. Baby. Yeah.
Intro warning, this podcast contains intense conversation that may contain triggers for some people. Please know you are listening to an in-depth conversation about the female body.
Warning, this podcast does talk about abortions, women's rights, and we discuss things that may, in fact, not be suitable for some. Please use caution when you continue to listen.
All right, welcome to our Dirty 30. Woohoo!
Woo!
Look at us, 1 year and 30 episodes. 1 year in and 30 episodes later. Fuck yeah, we're amazing. We are amazing.
We are.
So, as we all know, we've been messing with our forum a little bit. Miles has been doing follow-up tidbits on our sister's circumstances. I've been putting out tidbits that are lighthearted and keeping you intrigued on what junk is coming out of my mouth, but not what's going into it, because that would be rude. It has been one hell of a year, wouldn't you say, Miles?
Oh my God, it's been such a freaking year. I don't know where it went. I don't know what happened. I'm not even sure how it's already Memorial Day. I just have no idea what happened to anything this last year. It's fantastic, though.
Editing. Lots and lots of editing. So much editing. There's so much audio files on our floor. It's ridiculous. We'll trip over them.
Oh my gosh, there is so many and so many things that we have taken out and gone back in and trying to, both of us looking at the editing aspect of things has been definitely a lot of time is where our last year has gone. I know that we are still working on our audio quality. I know that I need to update our website, guys. It is happening. Blogs will be updated. It is now on my calendar of to-do things, so that way I start actually following through. And, of course, as always, you know, our big thing was joining the No Phony Network. They're actually even talking about possibly getting their own radio network going, so that's really exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. So we're really, the No Phony Network has been awesome. I know this month we are definitely pushing for the Know Your Draft podcast. It's a great podcast, but everybody just go to the nophonynetwork.com, and there are over 20 podcasts there that you can listen to, and they range from gaming, videos, variety, politics, stories. The new one that joined, Honest Chronic, he released, the newest episode was about his, the day that he got adopted as a kid. So, I mean, there's all kinds of there's interesting stories everywhere. So, listen, follow. We're all on Twitter. Follow us. Give us your money, by the way. If you get bored, get on Patreon and give us your money, please. And thank you.
Just a little bit. Come on, guys. Come on. Give us $1.
$1.
I've showed my tits for less. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I've always showed them for more. They're a nice set. But anyways, so hello. So we've been thinking about how we can celebrate our 30th episode. Well, after all what has been going on, we decided that we would celebrate our 30th episode and actually the next few episodes strictly on women's health, especially with what's going on with Miles and everything that she saw recently. Kind of revamped our interest in talking about it again. So let's start with history. History has a way of repeating itself over and over again, and because of that, we are back to the ways of making all abortions illegal across not just the United States, but worldwide. Number 45 Fucko-in-Chief passed a resolution that would do so much damage to other countries and the women that live within them, per Number 45's new Title X gag order. But I think when we wrote this, Ireland was still just about to vote on abortion. I don't know if you added that in, but
I did not.
Ireland overwhelmingly approved, or what was it
they approved to roll back.
Yes, I didn't want to say they approved the illegal, abortions, but there was a ban on abortions in Ireland from like 30 years ago, like 87 or 88, and overwhelmingly it was like a 7-30 vote to do away with that, so that women in Ireland have access to abortions. So now they have to bug their legislators to put into legislation abortions. Of course, abortions have to be, government rules and whatnot. You can't, but I understand in a way, but, I'm kind of tired of governments having their hands on women's bodies. So, but that was I just thought, you know what, that's really, we were talking about international, and I just thought, you know what, I want to make sure to include how excited I was to see, like, overwhelmingly,
and
they were like...
Ireland talks about their abortion rules is that, it went so much that there was a story I was reading about, and it was a woman who she was forced to carry a dead baby for over 20 weeks before they would, like, I don't know why. It was because of their laws and their legislation that the doctor's hands were tied. And they basically had to force this lady to carry a dead fetus in her body for over 20 weeks. And the emotional and the scarring and the damage that did to her was, and not only that, but she's still going through some of the physical changes with a dead body. It was a very harrowing story. It was very heartbreaking. So I'm very glad that Ireland has, in a very, very Catholic country, decided that women, know what's best for their bodies.
Right, and I just thought that was really cool. I was like, that is amazing. So, not to get off what we were talking about, but we were talking about the new Title X gag order here in the U.S. The policy is being referred to as a domestic gag rule, as it would likely prevent federal funding from going to any U.S. health clinic that so much as mentions abortion as an option for women. And just so people know, one of the biggest myths about Planned Parenthood is that they receive federal funding. None of the federal funding that they get goes at all towards abortions. That was part of the agreement. And so Planned Parenthood is under attack, and I used Planned Parenthood a ton when I was younger, and it actually kept me from having more kids when I was a teenager, So I adore Planned Parenthood. If this sounds familiar, it's because a policy like this already exists for U.S. funds going to international health organizations. You may remember that in 2017, President Trump reinstated the Mexico City policy, often referred to as a global gag rule on abortion, which prevented U.S. money from funding international health organizations that offer abortions or even just information about abortions, even if U.S. dollars aren't paying for the actual abortion-related services. The ban was introduced by President Reagan in 1984, and it's been rescinded and reinstated many times since then. So as usual, this man is putting something into place that he has no idea about. Honestly, if he didn't know the difference between HIV and HPV, do you think he understands anything at all about abortions? Women's rights? No, I don't fucking think so. And I'm sure President Trump has probably paid for an abortion or two in his time. Look how many fucking kids he has.
Exactly. And Trump is... As Clifford mentioned, this wasn't something new that Trump proposed. This has been an on-again and off-again sanction because, as always, men think that they know what to do with women's health. They talk narrative to make their wives happy, but they don't follow through on their words, as we have learned many men in office have had affairs that helped pay for abortions for the secret affairs that they were having on their wives. We know at the end of the day, most men don't care about abortions. And I say that because most men don't have any idea what it takes to have a child, what it does to a woman for the rest of her life, and how detrimental it is to her health. If men had babies, they would support abortions 100%. But why do you want abortions, Miles, you baby killer? Okay.
You fucking baby killer. Hey, you know what I was going to say before you get off on this tangent you're about to go on? If these men in office pay for abortions and we pay their salary, is that technically a government-funded abortion?
Yes, Crawford, it is. And nope, that's exactly what it is. And that is something that nobody ever talks about. When these legislators get caught having affairs, having abortions, all those things, there should be some of their pays should go back to the taxpayers themselves, because we have, in fact, been misled and have given money. And for all of those who are like, I don't support this, then ask for your money back. Because if you look into legislators from the House of Representatives to the senators to Congress, you will find out how many of them actually have been caught over the decades allowing abortions and forcing women that they are dating and having affairs with to have abortions. So, also,
yeah.
I am not a baby killer. I know that in many conversations I've had with women, they assume that because I am about a woman making a choice based on her own body and her own circumstance, that I am some baby killer going around, and I believe that all women should just abort all babies and that nobody has to have responsibility for their actions. No, you don't know me. And I really, by the way, don't support baby killing, because I like babies, because babies are what happens when they come out of the woman, and, taking responsibility for that. And I also know, though, that this is not my damn body, okay? So it's not my choice to make. I am not raising that kid. I am not that mother. I do not live their life. And by her having a kid she doesn't want, being forced to be something she doesn't want to be, puts that child at more risks than it is putting it in safeties. As well as that puts the mother in a situation that society might have to, in fact, take care of her. And since y'all hate people leeching off the system, you are a moron to think forcing women to carry kids they don't want to have won't have an impact on our pocket at some point. Y'all frustrate me. Like, you guys are so frustrating because you don't want to support women to make a choice for their body, but you won't even allow them to make or give them help once they do. Okay, so they don't get the abortion. Now they're forced to raise a kid. They don't have the money. They don't have the time. The kid goes into the welfare system that we end up having to take care of anyways. But yet you don't want to fund that either. I don't. It's astonishing to me how stupid we are when it comes down to these things. That we're so dead set on what we think that we know about somebody else's life, but we don't know their life. We don't know their story.
Or what's morally right for everybody. It's the moral right that is the issue.
Back alley abortions went away for a reason.
Yeah, and I actually, when we were putting this episode together, I had a bunch of junk just thrown into a document, like memes and little factoids and clips of articles and stuff that I had been like, ooh, and that was something that I actually forgot, was there's a reason why we have legal abortions now. It's because just because abortion is legal, if we made it illegal, it doesn't mean that abortions would stop altogether. And a lot of people don't realize that people who are pro-life, they're not just talking about abortion people, they're talking about birth control as well. They believe any attempt to stop life from forming is murder. So we're talking about abortion today, but please be aware that anybody that is pro-life, they're not just talking about abortion, they also feel that way about birth control. So that's why we have legal abortions, is because back alley abortions, unsafe abortions are just awful. So that's what some women are going back to, because like in Texas, I believe they violated law. Like there is no place in Texas for women to have an abortion now, so they have to travel to other states. That's kind of fucked up. Unsafe abortions often occur where abortion is illegal. However, the prevalence of unsafe abortion may also be determined by other factors, such as whether it occurs in a developing country that has a low level of competent medical care. When abortion is illegal, that generally contributes to the prevalence of unsafe abortion, but is not the only contributor. In addition, a lack of access to safe and effective contraception contributes to unsafe abortion. It has been estimated that the incidence of unsafe abortion could be reduced by as much as 73%. 73%. That's almost 100%. Without any change in abortion laws if modern family planning and maternal health services were readily available globally. Now, when we talk about unsafe abortions, many women have had to do some of the following in the past. And some of this is pretty graphic. I might have a hard time reading this. One of the ways that they try is, this is probably one of the most popular, the one that you hear about the most, is trying to break the amniotic sac inside the womb with a sharp object or a wire. For example, an unbent wire clothes hanger or a knitting needle. This method can cause infection or injury to internal organs, for example, perforating the uterus or intestines, resulting in death. The uterus softens during pregnancy and is very easy to pierce, so one traditional method was to use a large feather.
Ugh.
Yeah. Pumping toxic mixtures such as chili peppers and chemicals like alum, Lysol, permanganate. I don't know how to say that, Miles. Can you say that word? Or plant poison into the body of the women. This method can cause the woman to go into toxic shock and die. Inducing an abortion without medical supervision by self-administering abortifacient. As an over-the-counter drug or drugs obtained illegally by using drugs not indicated for abortion but known to result in miscarriage or uterine contraction. Drugs that cause uterine contractions include oxytocin. Synthetic forms are Pitocin and Syntocinon, which that's a pitfall, right? The Pitocin. Yep. That's where they give it to you when you're in labor.
Yep.
Prostaglandins. I tried to say these words before, but I'm still bleh. And ergot alkaloids. Risks include uterine rupture, irregular heartbeat, a rise in blood pressure, also known as hypertension, a drop in blood pressure, also known as hypotension, anemia requiring transfusion, cardiovascular problems, pulmonary edema, and death, as well as intense bronchospasms in women with asthma. An unsafe abortion can lead to a wide range of health risks that can affect the well-being of women. The major and most life-threatening complications that stem from unsafe abortions are infection, hemorrhaging, and injury to internal organs.
And I know that's a lot of information to understand, and we know that. We know some women have had to do this, even currently, because of the stigma about abortions. And even us talking about abortions make you think that we are completely pro-choice. I know that speaking for myself, and I feel like Crawford's along the exact same line, but not the exact same line, but I think we are. I want people to carry children. I want you to be an amazing mother. I want you to take care of that child and have it change your life. And I want you to feel those kicks in your belly and absolutely love it. But I know that you may not feel that way. You may, in fact, hate being pregnant. You may be a drug addict who can't get clean and will only harm your child for the rest of their life by carrying this child to term. You may have, in fact, been raped and can't just imagine being able to love this child, or maybe at all, or maybe you could send it to the adoption agencies, but fucking hell, you know that they don't have the best rates either, and that your child could just as well end up in sex trafficking. So you don't want to bring it to term. This child could also do damage to your body. This child could physically kill you. There are things that are going to happen to your body for the rest of your life, and you are not okay with having to wait for this baby to die inside of you before you can take the necessary steps for your own safety. These are all things that happen. These are real stories of real people. And I understand and agree that once there is a heartbeat, there is a life. But trust me when I say that, because I've seen when there is no heartbeat, but there is life itself. So I get it. But it's not my life, and it's not my choice to make for somebody else. I want to have women who are in a circumstance to have options. And not just options of abortions. I want them to have options for healthcare providers. I want women to understand the responsibilities of their actions. When we take away free health facilities like Planned Parenthood, there are young women out there who are having sex and have no idea, and truly have no idea about condoms and the best way for them to take birth control, because young girls at 13-year-old just know about birth control, but they don't understand the difference between the birth control pill, the birth control shot. Now it's like there's the ones that you can put in your arm. There's all different kinds of birth control methods that are out there. And when young women are going in there, like Crawford said, we had a Planned Parenthood locally. I had many girlfriends whose parents were never around, and they never had the proper sex education. They never had it. What we talked about in school was learning how to say the word penis and vagina. That was our big thing. That was overcoming. Boys got condoms and deodorant, and girls got tampons. Woohoo. And that was our sex health. But we now don't have anywhere for the younger kids right now, if they can't talk to mom and dad, and they can't go see their local physician, to talk openly and honestly about having safe sex. And having safe sex is very, very important, which obviously safe sex would lead to women not having to have abortions in the first place. But there are other reasons. Abortions isn't just some girl who had a one-night stand at a keg party and doesn't want to take responsibility for her actions. Abortions are so much more than that. They are women that have been stuck in such terrible situations. Or just simply because, like I was explaining to you, that lady in Ireland, her baby died in her womb, and they would not allow her to extract the fetus from her body until a certain week, because of the fact that would be considered abortion underneath those countries' rules. And she had to carry around something that was slowly killing her because it was dying inside of her. But because it was considered an abortion, it was not legal in her country to save that woman's... she's had so many more complications now. Her health was compromised because of that decision. And so when we talk about abortions, those back alley abortions, as Crawford was explaining, you're talking about taking these sharp objects and what women would do to themselves, or have their friends do, or their boyfriends do, or their husbands do. Falling downstairs, getting beat up intentionally, all these things that women had to go through just because they couldn't handle having a kid. And I understand, well, maybe she should get her shit together and blah, blah, blah. First off, again, you don't know her story. You don't know her situation. You guys are upset about the drug epidemic, but you're not even thinking about all the kids that are now being born into that with the shaking fetal syndrome. All those babies who are born addicted to opiates, and then their mothers walk away from them. Hospitals being overwhelmed by children they can't take care of. A system that it has been wonderful. I'm not dogging the orphanages and the foster care system. I'm not dogging them, but I have seen them fail on so many levels, being able to keep track of and making sure that children are being put into proper homes. There are children out there who are getting adopted and then being sex trafficked. And again, well, the kid stays alive. Okay, great. Well, what kind of life are you giving that kid? And some of these kids are so damaged by their mothers in the womb, from alcoholism to drug addictions, that they're never right. And their medical expenses comes, again, out of something that we have to pay for. So why would we not just want to open up as many health facilities as possible for young women to be able to go somewhere, get the care that they need from their doctors, be able to go to a Planned Parenthood and sit down and be able to go there and say, I need a condom. I'm having sex and I don't know what this means. I'm bleeding. Or, in some situations, I think I was raped and I don't know where else to go. I'm ashamed. I don't have anywhere to go. Maybe they don't have a strong sense of family. Maybe they don't have friends to go to. Maybe they're too embarrassed. Whatever the case. Planned Parenthood isn't something where women just walk in and then they just kill all these babies. They had rules. They had regulations. You couldn't just go in at any point of your pregnancy and Planned Parenthood was going to give you an abortion. That was never the rules. It was always about being early enough on. It was always about how you were. It was about the baby. It was about the health of the mother. It was about understanding the options. But forcing women to carry full-term babies when they don't want them, walking away from that child, abandoning their kids, or just perhaps just being a really shitty mom and never being there, and now a kid is stuck in an abusive home and just being unloved and not taken care of and not being read to and not being tucked in because their mother just doesn't care about that child. What kind of options are we really giving to these women? And I don't understand on so many levels how anybody who's listening thinks that you have the right to tell somebody else how to live, and how you can sit there and protect something like the guns, but you won't protect something like women's health. You want gun owners to have their rights? Great, then give women back their rights. Because it should be my decision. And I don't care what you think about me. I am actually a very pro-life person. But I also have the it's not my fucking decision. I don't want women to have abortions. I don't want them to be in a circumstance. I want them to take responsibility for their actions. I want them to understand that when you lay in bed intentionally without a condom, that there are consequences that you are going to pay. But just because it's something that I want, that doesn't mean it's something that everybody should have to follow either. I don't believe that. I believe that that woman knows her life and knows her choice. And no, absolutely not. We shouldn't be using abortions as some kind of, birth control. Trust me, in most states, when it was still, when there were more Planned Parenthoods, you were only allowed to go to Planned Parenthood so many times before you had to go somewhere else. And when women have to travel and come up with the money or hitchhike to get somewhere just to get the proper medical procedures done, instead, they can't do that. So they find these terrible, awful ways. They drink gasoline, what is that? Some kind of fluid, motor oil. I mean, all kinds of things.
Castor oil.
Thank you. And they do these things, and it's so bad for them, and it's so bad for their health. I don't understand why we want women to go back there. Are you guys really that afraid of our vote? Are you really that afraid of our voice? Are you really afraid of not being in charge of our lives? Like, I don't understand why you are such a controlling population, women and men, why you think that you should have a say on how somebody else should live. The only thing that you should have a say in is whether or not you're allowed to kill people. The actual regular laws that we should follow by, moral compasses. But just because somebody has a different moral compass as me does not make me a bad person or them a bad person necessarily. They just made different decisions. And it's not for me. I'm not here to judge and jury every person that walks in the street. I don't know them. Because the minute that I have the option to tell somebody else how they should live their life, then they have just as much reason to walk into my life and tell me how to live. So if you want to go ahead and you want to yell at those women and you want to protest them at Planned Parenthoods and you want to make them feel like shit because you have some fucking problem, then those women have just as much right to walk into your house. Tell you how to cook your food, how to raise your kids, what you should be doing, and let them pinpoint out every bad decision that you've ever made, and make sure they make it to frontline news. Make sure they throw eggs at you as you're walking to work. Make sure that anytime that you're having a bad day, that they just kick you down a little bit harder, because that's what you're doing. Women need help, and all you're doing is kicking them down further and further and further. There is my pedestal.
And, you know, what's upsetting is that there's not laws governing men's bodies. Like,
oh, of course not.
If we don't want, I mean, they're half the problem with unplanned pregnancies. Mm-hmm. So why don't, you know, they should have to have vasectomies, or, you know, there should be rules. I don't know. It's just, there's no rules governing men's bodies, but there's all kinds of rules governing women's bodies. And I think you're right.
Why don't men have to take birth control?
Right.
You want to know why? Is because they came up with a birth control for men. But all of the studies, the men didn't like the way they felt, so they went ahead and took away it. Men had birth control. They had created it. But they didn't like that it made them nauseous, fatigued, and tired.
Oh, it's just too much. That's just too hard. Let's just put it on the women, because that totally makes sense. And I agree with you a lot about your abortion views. I struggled for a really long time about how I felt with abortion, because I don't like abortion. It's not like I'm like, woohoo, let's kill some babies, you know, but I am very pro-choice, just like you are. It's your body, your choice. And I've had friends who've had abortions, and I've watched the after effects of that and what they go through, and before, you know, like the decision making and all that, and it's not easy. I don't want to see people abortion by convenience. You know, every time they get pregnant, they go and they have an abortion. It really bothers me. And so for a long time, I tried to struggle, like, am I pro-life or am I pro-choice? Because I don't like abortion, but I support the right for women to choose. And so I've decided that the term is caught on more, but there's pro-life and then there's pro-birth, which is what you were talking about, where these people want the child born, but they don't care what happens to that baby after it's born. And that's what bothers me the most. They think that I think what they want is they want to force a woman to have that baby, and then they want to force her to be a good mother and take care of her baby. Like, you laid your bed, now you got to make it. Now you need to take care of that baby, take care of your responsibility. And that's not what happens, okay? There's no magical, oh yeah, I get to be a mother now, hooray. You know, our foster system is overwhelmed, and it's just awful. I don't know if you read the recent headline, which just doesn't have to do with women's health, but what was it, almost 1,500 migrant children have gone missing that were separated from their families. They were put into the foster care system, and they just lost track of them. And I thought, how many of those children were sex trafficked or human trafficked for their organs? You know, I just find that unbelievable. So I don't like abortion, and I don't like that people have such a negative connotation with it, because I think women should have the right to decide whether or not they want to have an abortion, but there should be limits, you know, just like you were talking about, yeah, heartbeat, and I don't agree with late-term abortions. I think those are disgusting, and that's not right. Like, as soon as you know you're pregnant, you need to make that decision right away. And I think as women, doesn't matter if you're sexually active, or because we're the ones that experience abortions, every woman, from the time that they're aware of abortions and that's something that they could face, they tend to they have to have that conversation, you know, or they have to think about that themselves. They have to, well, would I ever have an abortion? I don't know, you know. I remember thinking about that in my teenage years, you know. And you're right about health class. They don't talk to us about what happens when you have sex. You know, you just learn about your bodies, and that's it. And you go into it, out into life with that little bit of knowledge. And if your parents don't talk to you about birth control or what happens, or have a frank discussion with you, the only places that you do get that information is from your other friends who are sometimes misinformed.
Yep.
Or if you can go to a place that, like Planned Parenthood, where they are like, okay, are you sexually active? Do you know what happens when you're sexually? I mean, when I went to Planned Parenthood, it wasn't like they lectured me, but they had talks with me because I already had a son. And so they really reached out to me in a special way to make sure, like, they would call, make sure I came to my appointments if I missed one or whatever else. They didn't lecture you. They just educated you on your body and your birth control options and, just supportive care. And it was really nice to go in there and not be judged for me already having a kid or whatever. Just being around a bunch of women who just wanted to help me be the best me that I could be as far as my family planning and what I wanted to do with my life. And that was the whole focus. And that's what I really love about Planned Parenthood. And even if you couldn't get an abortion at Planned Parenthood, I'd really like to see Planned Parenthood and other forms of clinics like Planned Parenthood out there for women's care, because there are a lot of girls out there whose parents never talk, because it's uncomfortable, and parents that don't talk to their kids about children. And then, we have the whole religious right. They are abstinence until you're married. And to me, that is something that's very annoying, is they live in this fairy tale world where there's no overpopulation. You should have 14 kids. Sex is only for procreation. Abstinence until you're married. No masturbation. They live in a fairy tale world where they think that we can go back 200 years. You can't undo progress. You can't undo history. We can forget and repeat it, but we've come too far. That's just not going to happen. And it kind of upsets me that if so many kids in the foster care system, we have people who are talking about not wanting women to have abortion, but they don't care about children. Like, it really bothers me how messed up, like, I call them cafeteria Christians, because they want one thing, but not this thing. And I want to believe this sentence in the Bible, but the next sentence I'm not going to read because that doesn't align with the point I'm trying to make. And it's like, we need to really become aware of where we are today, not versus 2,000 years ago when the Bible was written. We have real problems right now with overpopulation. The opiate epidemic has overwhelmed the foster care system. There's a whole slew. We've almost lost an entire generation at this point between the Iraq War and the opiate epidemic. Anybody between 25 and 35, they die constantly. They're just dying off. And so we had just had this with people who are drug addicts and can't take care of their kids, or they died and they can't take care of their kids. And then we have migrant children who are going into our foster care system. And it's so overwhelmed that, like you said, they're going to these sometimes horrible foster. They just approved. I saw a commercial the other day. It was like, anybody can be a foster care parent. Like, I hope not. You know what I mean?
No, and not the best. Like, foster care is also and foster care is also, there's some people who go into it with all the right intentions. They do.
Right.
They want to. Here's the thing about foster care.
It's the pay, though. You get paid to be a foster parent. And a lot of people go on it just for that. That's why you hear stories about kids in cages and down in the basement, things like that.
Absolutely. And again, just because you're a foster parent doesn't mean that you get to have some beautiful, wonderful child with no problems walk into your house. Foster care means that you take care of the kids that are in the foster health system. Some of them can be amazing kids, and some of them may have anger issues. Some of them might be biters. They might be hitters.
Yeah, I had a teacher when I was in middle school. She was our home ec teacher, and she was an amazing woman, very sweet. But she had adopted a brother and sister, and we both grew up through the crack epidemic of the 90s, when there was a lot of crack babies born. She'd adopted a brother and a sister, and they were both had health issues or whatever, and they were a couple years, not much older than me, but a couple years older. And I can remember her having to take days off or telling us stories about how, like, her adopted son wouldn't use the bathroom, and he would poop in his dresser drawers and pee in bottles and leave them in the closet. He took a knife at her. It just got really, 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 really bad, to the point where she actually ended up having to return them to the foster system because he had tried to kill her like 2 or 3 times, and she was like, I just can't do it anymore. And then she retired after. I think she had a breakdown because she retired after that. But I did know somebody that had some very troublesome, and that's the thing about the foster care system is they're kids that nobody wants. You know, I mean, that's the sad thing about it. And so you're not gonna get an apple. You know, and I don't know if you ever see, but there's a lot of on social media I see couples who want to adopt, and so they create like their own Facebook page, and they're looking for a baby, and it's like there are thousands and thousands and thousands of children that you can adopt. Why are you waiting? I don't understand how people are waiting to adopt. I don't.
Well, adoption is so expensive. That's why.
Yes, and why is it? You know, why aren't we making it? If someone qualifies, you know, they pass all the tests and all the paperwork and everything, why do we have to pay? Why do we have to, you know, charge these people so much? We're trying to get children into homes, you know, but that's government funding. You know, that's something that would help a lot if we put money into that, and sobriety houses and things. We need more social programs, and I know that probably makes me a socialist, but with women's health and family planning and our foster care system, I mean, this country is falling apart, and we keep sweeping it under the rug with distractions and things like that, we're just ignoring it. And there's all these children just falling through the cracks. And this is our generation that's eventually going to lead the country. And to me, I'm just like, how many children are there in that generation right now where the parents have died or they don't care, they went through the foster system? In 20 years, they're going to be entering office. I mean, what is our crime rate going to be? To me, it's just everything that we do now affects our future. And that's what people just ignore that. They live in their perfect little bubble, and this is how things are, and this is how things are going to be. So we shouldn't change it, you know, but we should also limit people's rights.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, and again, I'm not even against, you know, it's one of those things that I think that people who may have listened to our past podcasts may have a semi of a misunderstanding to think that I'm a very non-religious or non-faith-based person, or, I mean, I don't go to church, and, you know, we all, you know, me and Crawford had this talk, about a week ago, you know, about kind of just, you know, there's something that is bigger than me, and you know, what I believe is what I believe, but I also know that when this earth was made and these people are here and we are here, and I follow by the basic principles of the Bible, which is love thy neighbor, you know, be kind, and all those things that to me.
That's common sense. To me, the 10 Commandments, that's just common sense.
Absolutely.
You know? Like, yeah, don't kill, don't steal, don't bang your neighbor's wife, don't be jealous of others, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And I don't think that we need to sit here
to me, that's just common sense. That's shit that we do already.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, though, it's one of those things where I have problems. I don't have a problem with the way that you worship your God. I have a problem with if that means that you have to hate somebody. You know, if your God tells you or promotes you to hate somebody or to hate the way that they're doing things. I mean, in the true hate. I'm talking not, I don't like this and this makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm talking about people who are frothing at the mouth, that hate women who are trying to make a choice for themselves. You don't have to agree with it. I don't always agree with it. I don't agree all the time with women who make some of these decisions and why they make those decisions. I don't
agree with those people who are Bible bangers, okay? So,
yeah,
that's a mutual feeling here, but I don't attempt to press my views on you. I just want people to be able to live their life without interference from other people and their beliefs, you know?
Absolutely. And that's, you know, so for those of you who are listening, you know, who are very faith-based people, again, I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong. I'm not here to tell you to not believe in God or not to follow, you know, what your heart tells you. I'm not here to, you know, I am slightly here to hope that that we have tapped into your, you know, understanding that we don't necessarily, you know, support one way or the other. We're trying to stay very unbiased in this, but we want you to understand that by making women have to carry children that they are not wanting and cannot carry to term, that there are consequences. It's not a butterfly effect. It is a true, you know, there are true consequences of these women being forced to have these children. And some of those consequences mostly are back alley abortions. And I'm not talking about just in America. I'm talking about your local town, and I'm talking all the way across seas. And when we're putting out certain legislation that is stopping other countries from getting healthcare needs, so their women can no longer get their healthcare needs, it like Crawford said, we're taking out an entire generation. We are going to have children everywhere being born with all kinds of diseases and problems because the women and where they live in their country, and these are a lot poorer of countries of what I'm speaking of, will not be able to get the necessary true medical help that they need. And there is going to be a problem, a bigger epidemic. These are how diseases are spread. More and more people that are being in these condensed areas, and these women will not have access to their health care, not just in America, but across seas. And then again, it's something that we will have to eventually face. I mean, eventually, as we've seen across the board. I mean, I know this is a crazy conspiracy, but think about it. Think about all of the babies that will have to be born, not just here, but everywhere else. And problems with things like malaria and scarlet fever and how those outbreaks happen in smaller countries. But now, in those smaller countries where we are able to provide some form of health relief, we will not be able to do that at all. And these women, even out there, are going to be having all kinds of different bacterial problems because, again, they're having to do a back alley abortion. It affects all of them. And I just don't want women to have unsafe anything. Have safe sex, please. And if you're a parent, please talk to your children. I've got 2 young boys. One is 11 and one is almost 9. And I talk to them all the time. Sex has never been something that we have ever shied away from. I'm very open and honest about sex, about your hormones, about things that are going to happen to your body, about what it's like, that as they get older, women are going to be more appeasing. Or maybe not just women, maybe, the other sex, but, about safe sex, about those kind of things that are important now. And I tell them now at these very young ages, and I make things like the word penis or vagina. They're going to laugh at it, but it's not going to be embarrassing for them to openly talk to their partner as they get older. How great would it be that your child can be comfortable not just talking to you, but talking to the person that they're with about sex, about safe sex, about what's appropriate when they want to get started. Nobody wants to have their kids, having sex at 13, 14 years old, but it's happening. And those 13 and 14-year-olds, if you are not going to advise them younger, they're not going to know any better. They're going to know what YouTube told them. They're going to know what Google tells them to do. They're going to know what their Snapchat friends tell them to do. But the best thing that you can do as somebody who says, I don't believe in this, is to talk to your kid about safe sex. And also talk to your child about consequences, what this means, how this will affect. And even if you only have boys like I do, I always talk to them about what could happen to a woman because we are women and it affects our bodies. And those boys who impregnate these girls should be just as much responsible and should as much have to face the parents and face the consequences of their actions. But you boys don't have to carry babies, so you guys don't really have real consequences. You guys can walk away from all that situation and never have to deal with it. But we need to make sure that the women who need the health care are getting the health care. The women who need to have abortions are getting safe abortions. Okay? They need to be safe. I don't want to be hearing about 16-year-old girls who are, in bathrooms with coat hangers. That's not okay. That's so terrible.
That's taking us back.
Yeah.
It's just taking us back to another time. Is that's why we made abortions legal, is because it was, that wasn't the only reason. But that was a major driving force in deciding. And I think a lot of people forget that. And I hope that maybe we opened some people's eyes on abortion and gave them something to think about, honestly. And, we don't want to change minds, but we just want people to understand the thought process behind it and why it came about, and not just with abortion, but with women's health care and making sure that, we have a lot going on. We're life makers. We carry bodies. We have heart issues. We go through menopause, breast cancer. Not to say that men aren't affected by a lot of health issues themselves, but we're vulnerable to a lot of diseases, especially, I believe, women of color. A lot of the things that women face, women of color tend to have a higher rate of facing that. So just like we don't have mental health care here in America anymore, we really don't have any kind of women clinics anymore either. In the 70s, it was kind of a rise with the birth control pill. When that came out, I just watched a really cool segment about birth control and how that came about. Very cool, but off topic. So
No, it's not off topic. I think it's good. And I think that, for the women who are listening, feel free to have your feelings. I'm not telling you that you need to change your religion or your beliefs or anything. I'm just asking that before you jump on a bandwagon and yell at somebody and tell them how they should live their life, that you need to step back for a moment and think about, are you going to raise that kid? Do you live with that woman? Are you going to help her raise that entire family for the rest of her life? And if you're not willing to dedicate yourself to the birth of that child, to the life of that child forever after, then I don't think that you should, in my opinion, tell them how to do it. And you have every right to not like abortions, because either do I. I don't like them either. But
I think you're a sick person if you do.
Yep.
But to understand the utilization of them,
exactly,
I think is what's important. So, I think we kind of covered all the bases on our thoughts and explaining the reasons behind them and the things that go through women's heads and the need for access to health care. What are we planning for the rest of our series there, Miles?
Oh, well, we have got all kinds of things. And don't worry. I mean, we are going to talk about other things. We're not going to dedicate the next, 4 episodes to, just talking about abortions. But we do want to talk about women's health. I know that we had made a list, and now I, of course, cannot find the list of things that we were talking about. But you were really good. You were the one that started that list, darn it. But I think that overall, our next episodes are I want to talk about how women's health in general. I mean, what are the next steps? Okay, so if we go back, the Roe versus Wade, and we're taking all those things away, okay, well, what are the next steps of women's health? For me, I think it is about medical care and women's medical care in general. The lack of...
You know what we could talk about next time? It just came to me. Old school... do you remember, have you ever read about female hysteria? And how they used to, basically, he'd bang women, and it was a doctor. He created a contraption, and female hysteria he was just giving them orgasms. Like different treatments that women have gone through in the past. And like maybe some of the sadder things, like women who weren't happy with being a housewife or whatever, they were given lobotomies and sent back home, like, now you're happy.
Yeah. That would be good. Again, the process of why we're trying to change things, because this is where we used to be, and let's not go back there. Right. I like it.
I like that idea too. So I think that'd be a cool thing to come up on. So this is the first of our 4 parts, maybe more, who knows? I mean, probably 4 parts, but I don't want to set us in stone if we're like, we should do a 5th. This would be a great topic. So
yeah, exactly. Who knows? I mean, we might get enough hate reviews that, we might actually be able to,
Well, we're going to touch some nerves, you said.
Yeah, I think we might touch some nerves. We might. And I'm, I feel in my heart of hearts, I don't feel this podcast was to piss people off. This podcast was just to be informative.
Educational.
Yep. Exactly.
Informational.
Exactly.
Let's see, do you have any amazing shout-outs for us there, Miles?
I've always got amazing shout-outs. I love everybody. You guys are all so wonderful. I'm kidding, but you guys are. I mean, to some degree. Every week, I always like to obviously give earlier. I shouted out to the No Phony Network. Part of all of those, I have, like I said, the Honest Chronic. I really enjoy the podcast. Really interesting. I just listened to only 1 episode, but what I've listened to, I very much liked. Other than that, I mean, I've been kind of slightly off the radar when it comes to things this past week, just because I'm actually trying to, get life together again. So that's always wonderful. That's the only shout out I have this week. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm lacking. I'm slacking this week.
Oh, that's okay. I'm okay with that. We did do our No Phony Network, and there's only so many podcasts that you can really listen to. And then when you listen to so many, you listen to them every week, you really can't always squeeze in a new one. So we don't want to be repetitive with our shout-outs. I just thought maybe you had something new to throw at us this week.
Not yet, but I will next week. Don't you worry.
It is Memorial Day today, and so we're enjoying an extra... Well, Miles is enjoying Memorial Day. I have to work later,
But we do thank you for everybody, and we appreciate those who, obviously, we always appreciate those who serve. We appreciate those who, today is Memorial Day. It is not about those who are actively serving. It is about those who are unable to come home. And to their families, we appreciate what you, as a family, we appreciate what you had to sacrifice to have lost your child, your loved one, your husband, your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, whatever the case may be. We definitely appreciate what you have done and to help fight the many wars of this country.
That's exactly what Memorial Day, and a lot of people get upset because people confuse Veterans Day as Memorial Day, or Memorial Day is about celebrating and remembering those that have served, lost their lives, and the families that were affected by it. I definitely appreciate everybody who didn't come home, and I think about them collectively because I don't know them all, obviously. But, just a moment to just kind of appreciate the fact that somebody would willingly sacrifice their life for people they don't know, like me and like you, even if they were I see some people who kind of complain about the non-combat veterans, that they don't have a right to stand up to or shouldn't get the same respect as a combat veteran. And I don't think that's right, because if you sign up for military service, to me, that's your statement right there. Like, I'm willing to give my life for this country before you know whether you're going to be a combat or non-combat. It's the fact that they go in with that courage, So it shouldn't be one more than the other is better, It's the fact that you're willing at all,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we definitely, we know those kind of sacrifices that we have not given ourselves. So we definitely appreciate those who have.
Yeah. So I think that's all we have for this week. We're back on it, guys. Oh, yeah.
Yay!
We'll get this edited and uploaded, and hopefully have second part out to you next week. I hope you enjoyed our first part on women's health, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.